morning, everyone, or afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackie Rose, and I am the CEO of Rose Family Creative Empowerment Center. You are in that space currently, and I'm also a community incubator lead for Meadowview as part of the Black Child Legacy Campaign. We have been involved with community violence intervention with 6 other Sacramento communities here in Sacramento. They are Arden Arcade, Valley High, Fruit Ridge Stockton, Oak Park, North Sac, Del Paso Heights, North Highlands Foothill Farms, and those folks are here in the room today, so welcome, all of you. We also provide violence intervention, crisis intervention, with community, when violence occurs here in the community in partnership with Always Knocking and Movement for Life. Through the Black Child Legacy Campaign, we work closely with county probation, other law enforcement agencies, Sacramento City Unified School District, Safe Schools, Sacramento County Department of Human Assistance, CPS, Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, and community partners to ensure juvenile justice-involved youth and their families successfully navigate and exit juvenile justice systems by providing much-needed case management, wraparound services, and referrals to resources. That's a little bit of what we do. I just wanted to introduce myself and also welcome you all to the space. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, I'd like to introduce to you guys the Attorney General Bonda. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. First, let me say thank you to all the groups that are here that do this work on the ground every day, heads down, sleeves rolled up, making our community safer, saving lives, improving health. So I want to say thank you to all of you. Violence intervention programs work. We need more of them. We need them expanded. We need them invested in. We don't need them cut. And so that's why we're here. And I want to say thank you to Ms. Jackie. Thank you to the Rose Family Creative Empowerment Center for hosting us. It's a very appropriate place to be, given their important work that they do every day. And we're here because in the last couple of weeks, President Trump and the U.S. Department of Justice, led by Attorney General Pam Bondi, have slashed $811 million in critical federal funding that was and should be spent on making our communities safer. They are divesting from public safety instead of investing in public safety, in programs that work. And including in that those cuts are funds allocated to the Federal Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, an initiative created through, this is important, the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Those words don't cross our lips that much these days, bipartisan. And not something you hear a lot about these days, but it was a bipartisan group of U.S. Congress members who saw the important role that evidence-based, community-led programs play in reducing violence, and they invested in it. Why? Because it works. The data and the evidence is undeniable. It's irrefutable. And now, Trump and Bondi are demolishing what Congress built, threatening public safety and endangering our communities in the process. Trump loves to shout and tout America first. Well, in this instance, he's right. The U.S. is the first in the world when it comes to gun ownership, gun violence, and, tragically, gun deaths. Gun violence is America's unique disease. There are 46,000 gun deaths in our country each year, more than 125 each day. Guns are the leading cause of death of our children and our young adults in this country. American children are more likely to die from gun violence than in any other comparable country. And the disparities experienced by communities of color are one of the starkest examples of inequity in our country today. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to this problem, which is why community-led solutions work. Every region, every city, and community face their own unique challenges when it comes to gun violence. That's why it's so critical that we empower community members, organizations, and local law enforcement partners to lead the charge in tackling the crisis in their own backyards. people who are on the ground in our neighborhoods and experts on their community's unique needs. California's proof. 30 years ago, California's gun homicide rate was the third highest in the country. Now we're one of the safest states. In 2023, gun homicides were 37% below the rest of the U.S., and we had the 7th lowest overall gun death rate in the nation. 30 years ago, California had the 3rd highest rate of youth firearm homicides in the nation. In 2023, it was about half the rate recorded in the rest of the U.S. on average. What's more, if the national gun death rate matched California's over the last 10 years, nearly 140,000 Americans would still be with us today. And hundreds of thousands more gunshot injuries could have been prevented. None of this progress was an accident. It's a direct result of our nation-leading, common sense, data-driven policies and programs, and the tireless work of community leaders working to interrupt cycles of violence and help victims of crime recover. Programs like the California Violence Intervention and Prevention Grant Program, also known as CalVIP, and the local organizations it supports. And programs like the U.S. DOJ's Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, which represented a historical federal investment in gun violence prevention and victim care. Thanks to Trump, it's been cut. I want to note that CalVIP, California's program, isn't directly impacted by the $811 million cut we're talking about today. That program stands. However, given the challenging budget climate our state is facing, the immediate future of funding of CalVIP is still to be determined by the legislature. That's why the federal funding Trump cut from the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative was so critical. It helped complement CalVIP funding for programs that we know work. Both sources of funding are critical and needed. Programs, these violence intervention programs are filled with heroes, with violence interrupters, with counselors and mentors who put themselves in harm's way to stop shootings before they occur and heal and protect those at highest risk. Thanks to the investments both California and the federal government have made in recent years, communities around California were able to hire hundreds of trained violence prevention specialists to reach, to heal, and to protect thousands of people at highest risk of being shot or involved in cycles of violence. Study after study has shown that these investments work, and we're seeing city after city report major reductions in gun violence. Thanks to a CalVIP-funded program, San Francisco's homicide rate has reached a 60-year low. Bakersfield and Fresno cut homicides in half in 3 years. Thanks to tens of millions of CalVIP funding, Los Angeles homicides fell to a 5-year low, and in LA neighborhoods with strong community violence intervention infrastructure, homicides were down as much as 65%. After $13 million in CalVIP funding, Oakland homicides dropped 34% last year. The data is clear. When you invest in community violence intervention and prevention, gun violence drops and our communities are safer. You cannot deny it. Why? Because, and we've all heard this and it's true, hurt people, but healed people, heal people. Intervention and prevention programs heal people impacted by community violence. They help victims and impacted families recover and move forward. And by doing so, they break cycles of violence and reduce the risk of future violence. This information is all out there. It's no secret. We're not hiding it, and neither are community programs across the nation that have benefited from the federal funds Trump slashed. Trump and Bondi are ignoring these facts, ignoring the people dying in our communities, ignoring the families ripped apart by gun violence. Instead, they're ripping support away from community programs that save lives. Programs like Youth Alive in Oakland, which, among other projects, runs the nation's first hospital-based violence intervention program. Youth Alive staff sit at the bedside of youth who've been shot, giving them the individual support they need to navigate their recovery and heal. Youth Alive helps gun violence victims take positive steps forward instead of going down the path of retaliatory violence. In 2024, they served 113 individuals, only one of whom has been injured again. Trump pulled $2 million from Youth Alive's program. Urban Peace Institute in LA helps train and certify street outreach workers. The data shows that when professionally trained intervention workers respond to a homicide in LA, the chance of a retaliatory kill falls to less than 1%. That's massive. Trump pulled $1.5 million from Urban Peace Institute's program. Programs like Advance Peace, a fellowship program that breaks cycles of gun violence by reaching out to young men who are more likely to resort to violence and helping them find other, more productive, more positive paths forward. Since Advance Peace began, homicide rates in Fresno dropped from 74 in 2021 to 30 last year. Trump pulled $2 million from Advance Peace, about half of their budget. Those are just a few of the proven community violence intervention and prevention programs that Trump is gutting. Gun violence is a public health crisis. And while we all hear about the devastating mass shootings, it's much larger than that. Every day, families in our communities lose loved ones to incidents of gun violence that don't make the news, are not on the front page. And every day, community violence interrupters stop and prevent violence before it happens. Heroes who don't normally make the news but should, because they're saving lives. For all the progress we made in California, even one death, one shooting is too many. We've got to keep our foot on the gas until our communities are safe from gun violence. Cutting community violence intervention funding is a slap in the face to Americans who've made it clear in the streets and, yes, in the voting booth, that public safety is a top concern. Americans are demanding real solutions that will protect their families, protect their businesses, tackle violence, and make communities safer. Trump is doing the opposite, gutting proven programs that have successfully made our communities safer. And let's be clear, this isn't the first move Trump's made that threatens public safety. Didn't take him but day one, January 20th, the day he got inaugurated. He pardoned all of the January 6th rioters who stormed our Capitol, including those convicted of violently assaulting police officers. He cut more than $55 million in funding meant to train first responders to use naloxone, the life-saving overdose reversal drug that saves people from dying from a fentanyl overdose as our nation confronts our fentanyl crisis. He shuttered the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention and erased a public health advisory that declared gun violence a public health crisis, which it is. Trump's rolling back the progress we've made to improve public safety and save lives. His actions aren't only dangerous, they'll be deadly. So today, I and we are urging Trump and Bondi to reverse course and do the right thing, reinvest in community violence intervention programs. It's truly a matter of life and death. It's what the voters deserve. It's what Americans deserve. It's what the people want. We need safe streets and safe communities. We need programs that work. Whether Trump sees the light or not, I'm grateful for the tireless efforts and commitment of the people up here with me in this room and across our state who are dedicated to tackling gun violence, protecting our communities, and saving our children. I want you to know I'm your partner in the fight to end gun violence. California DOJ, including our Office of Gun Violence Prevention, are your partners. As California's chief law enforcement officer, public safety is and will always be priority number 1, number 2, and number 3. I urge the president to join me. With that, please let me turn it over to my friend and ally, Mike McLively from Giffords.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Bonta, for your leadership on this issue. From one father to another, I couldn't thank you enough for the courageous leadership you show every single day in keeping our communities safe. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike McLively. I'm the Policy Director of the Giffords Center for Violence Intervention, and our organization was founded and named after former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was shot back in 2011 while hosting an event for her constituents. Yesterday was Mother's Day, and I always think about Gabby, who wanted to be a mother more than anything else and was robbed of that dream by a bullet. I also think about the thousands and thousands of other mothers across this country who have lost children to the epidemic of gun violence. Just this last Friday, we were at an event in Oakland for Youth Alive, and we heard from a mother who lost her partner and her son to gun violence, and now works at Youth Alive, intervening and preventing violence in our schools. It's an incredible story of pain, but also of resilience and action. And it is, in fact, a slap in the face that she's part of the community safety workforce that was just attacked directly by the Trump administration, which just cut, as you heard without warning, more than $800 million of public safety grants. We are here today to sound the alarm on these cruel and reckless cuts made by the Trump administration to dozens and dozens of grants for community violence intervention in organizations across the country, including many here in California, who are here today in this room. Included was programs that prevent violence, support trauma recovery, fight opioid addiction, serve hate crime victims, and provide mental health resources for law enforcement. All of that gone overnight. And the reason that was given to groups like Youth Alive, who you'll hear from in just a moment, it wasn't that they weren't doing a good job. It wasn't that they weren't meeting their reporting requirements. It's that they were no longer effectuating the administration's priorities of protecting our children. It is incredibly ironic that that's the reason for canceling these grants. And more than that, it's dangerous because that's exactly what these programs are doing. They are keeping our children and our communities safe. And these cuts make it so much harder to do that. For some very important context, over the last 2 years, we've seen two trends in the United States when it comes to community violence. First, historic investments in community-based violence intervention programs that save lives. Groups like Youth Alive, Healing the Hood Initiative from the Sierra Health Foundation, Movement for Life here in Sacramento. All of these are providing mental health, mentoring, jobs, and other supportive services to the small number of high-risk individuals that drive the majority of violence in any given city. And as the Attorney General just said, we have seen historic reductions in communities across the country, from Newark to Detroit to cities here in California. As you just heard, San Francisco's homicide rate is at a 60-year low. Oakland homicides are down 34% last year. This work is working, and it had just had the rug pulled out from under it by an irresponsible administration. These cuts dismantle years of strategic and bipartisan investment in community-based public safety. As you heard the Attorney General say, this work was funded by the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act from members on both sides of the aisle. Democrats, Republicans alike agreed that it was a good idea to fund this work, and it was working. It was doing exactly what it was intended to do, and yet it's been cut. This is a reckless and dangerous overreach. The DOJ and the Trump administration have to be held accountable for putting lives at risk. So we call on members of Congress today to restore this life-saving funding. And in the meantime, as the federal government turns its back on this life-saving work, the rest of us, from government leaders to the private sector to community volunteers, we have to lean in and do more than ever before to support this work and the heroic people and organizations that are saving lives every single day. We're incredibly grateful for the leadership of the Attorney General and California legislators who have been at the forefront of the fight to fund community violence intervention work at the state level. We talked about CalVIP earlier, and for those who don't know, that's the California Violence Intervention and Prevention Program. It's a flagship program, and our state leaders have dramatically increased funding for it in recent years, including passing a tax on the sale of firearms and ammunition, the first state in the country to do that, that's funding this work. But with gun sales down across the state, and now this federal betrayal of our public safety, CalVIP faces a critical funding gap, and we call on our state legislators and our leaders here in California to support the CalVIP's Coalition supplemental budget request to ensure this work can continue. So in concluding, we invite everyone, community members, advocates, public officials, partners across the country to join us in demanding the full restoration of this funding and standing up for the safety and dignity of all communities. More than anything else, we thank the groups and the frontline workers, many of whom are here today, who do this life-saving work every single day and keep all of us safe from gun violence. Thank you so much for what you do. And now I'd like to introduce a friend and strong ally in this work, Assemblymember Mike Gibson.
Good morning, buenos dias to each and every one of you that is here. I want to also pause for a moment before I begin my remarks and thank the great leadership of our Attorney General for his not only steadfast, but also his determination to making sure that California remains safe. That was it. You should put, yeah. And to Ms. Jackie Rose, thank you very much for your leadership in hosting and bringing us all here together. An incredible leadership that you bring. To Gifford Center, I see you. Youth Alive, I see you. Moms Demand Action, I see you. Everytown, I see you. And so many of our coalition partners who have traveled down this road together, that we stand together united on this day. I'm Assemblymember Mike Gibson. I have the distinct honor of representing the people of the 65th State Assembly District. Let me tell you who those individuals are. Watts Willowbrook, where I was born and raised. I represent Compton. I represent North Long Beach, Carson, Harbor City, North and South, Wilmington, and San Pedro. It makes up about 500,000 people that I represent. And let me simply say this. Every life is important to not only to my residency, but also to the state of California. And today, we face this engraved injustice. It's cold-blooded. It's unprecedented attack on our community. The federal government, no. The Trump administration, I want you to be clear. The Trump administration, not just the federal government, but it's this administration that has canceled the $811 million of vital funds and the funding that save people's lives and also heal those who've been wounded. Bring hope to our streets. They are important to the very fabric of peace in our community. The programs like the CVIPI builds and have built a bipartisan community trust, have demonstrated a real result, reducing violence, lowering homicide. It was already said by 65% in some neighborhoods that offer a path towards peace. But let me remind you that these cuts are not just numbers on a ledger. They are a direct assault on the very fabric of our community. And most of these communities are black and brown communities. They threaten the work, the outreach programs, the families who have strived on a daily basis to bring safety and hope to our children. This is a betrayal. Denying investments that has proven to work, that have saved lives and have fostered a future of promise. I say, today, California will not stand idly by. We will not back down. We will not be silent. We will not shut up and sit down, but we will double down. We will organize our voices everywhere, and we will fight until we see the justice that we need. We will fight for the resources for our communities, because guess what? They deserve it. We know that peace is not just absence of violence. It is the presence of justice. I just said something. Yes. And justice demands that we invest in the people who are doing the hard work day in and day out, our frontline warriors, the peace warriors, those who heal our community. Let us continue to stand together, unite in purpose, unwavering in our commitment to justice, to safety, and for the dignity of every human life. Because in the end, the arc of moral universe bends towards justice. The justice demand that we stand strong. The justice demand that we stand firm. The justice demand that we stand together. And we'll get through this. But we're going to get through this doing everything we can to fight, and also to making sure that Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, silence is a form of betrayal. No one standing here will be silent on the things that matter.
Well, it's tough to follow up such eloquent speakers, but I'm proud to join my colleague in the State Assembly to support the critical work that's happening in California to reduce gun violence and to create safer, healthier communities. Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Jesse Edeghi, and I proudly represent Senate District 7, which includes the city of Oakland. And I just want to touch on a statistic the Attorney General talked about. Because of community violence intervention programs that we have done on the ground, working with Youth Alive and other community-based partners, we have seen a 34% reduction in gun violence in the city of Oakland. And that's the case throughout the state of California. These programs do make a difference. They are saving young people, they're saving neighborhoods, and that's why it's absolutely critical that we stand firm to not just push back against these irresponsible cuts, but to make sure that we preserve critical state funding through the CalVIT program through this upcoming budget process. As was touched upon, gun violence in California is reaching its lowest level in decades. And this is the result of a combination of factors, including common sense gun regulations, strong and effective enforcement. I want to lift up the leadership of our Attorney General in that work. Increase opportunities for at-risk youth and at-risk communities to expand the economic safety net for our communities, and community violence intervention programs. And these programs, as many of the speakers have touched on, are a key part in why we are seeing lower rates of gun violence and why California has some of the lowest rates of gun violence of any state in the United States. But as was noted a couple of weeks ago, the United States Department of Justice took the unjust action of cutting $811 million in grants for community violence intervention programs. At least 365 community-based grants are on the chopping block. And in my district, 6 nonprofits have seen their budgets cut. And you'll hear from one of them, Youth Alive, very shortly. This risks upending all the progress that we've made here in California to invest in community-driven solutions that reduce gun violence. And put this in context, while the federal government is expanding funding for immigration enforcement to terrorize our communities, here they are taking away needed funding to protect our communities. That is the wrong approach. We will not let that stand here in California. So let's be clear. Trump may talk about being tough on crime, but his actions show that he is eliminating our ability here in California to prevent crime and putting families and our law enforcement partners at risk. So as the chair of the State Senate Public Safety Committee, I'm committed to working with my colleagues in the Assembly to push back against these draconian cuts and to expand funding for violence prevention programs in California that have proven to work. And let's be clear that we owe it to the people of California. If we believe in public safety, we need to stand firm in protecting this vital funding. That's why I'm honored to join Assemblymember Gibson and Wicks and others to lead an effort to allocate $198 million in funding for the CalVIT program this budget cycle. This is funding that is critical to continuing our efforts to reduce homicides and shootings. And in my district, CalVIT has had a real impact, not just in Oakland, 34% reduction in gun violence, but in the city of Richmond, lifting up the work of the Office of Violence Prevention. These are proven solutions. We need to support these state funds while we're working to encourage the federal administration to reverse these cuts, because these are proven strategies that work to make California safer. And I stand with our Attorney General and my colleagues in the legislature and all of our community partners to say that we will not let this happen. We will stand for a safer California. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gabriel Garcia, and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for Youth Alive, which you've heard a lot about today. I want to thank our elected champions for standing with us, especially in this moment of crisis, and to the other advocacy organizations and community-based organizations that have showed up in such strong support today to show that we will not be silent and we will stand together as the federal government makes an attack on our field. As has been mentioned, across the nation, millions have been taken from programs that help keep their community safe, that serve victims of violence, that prevent shootings. Defunding these community violence intervention prevention programs puts lives at risk and jeopardizes the progress that so many cities, including Oakland, have made towards safety. In Oakland alone, as you heard, homicide rates and assaults with a firearm have decreased dramatically by about 30% in 1 year. 30% in 1 year. These historic drops show that community violence intervention works, and that is why we need to fund it. At Youth Alive, we feel the crisis these federal funding cuts have caused. As you've heard, we lost $2 million overnight that was dedicated to supporting our hospital-based violence intervention program, Caught in the Crossfire. Caught in the Crossfire is the nation's first and longest-running program of its kind that now serves as an international model for how cities can address and reduce violence. In 2024, Caught in the Crossfire supported over 113 survivors of community violence, from the hospital bedside through every step of their healing journey, through their recovery, to make sure that they did not re-injure. And about 99% of our clients have not experienced a violent re-injury since then. With our violence interruption and intervention specialists from Caught in the Crossfire working together, they have a strategy to prevent retaliatory shootings. Because we know that evidence shows that the strongest predictor of violence is a previous incident of violence. So by getting in the hospital bedside, by making sure that whoever shot our client in the first place is being accounted for, we know that we can prevent retaliatory shootings. But with the federal funding cut, we'll be forced to drop our program capacity by at least 25%. This will mean dozens of gunshot victims that we won't have the resources or capacity to help. Dozens of lost opportunities to intervene and prevent retaliatory violence. And dozens of chances to make Oakland safer, all taken from us overnight. This is a loss that not only us, but communities around the country are contending with. Because we know cutting community violence intervention, cutting this funding is a life or death issue. But the federal government, with these actions, has abdicated its responsibility to keep us safe. That is why we need state and local leaders, like those standing beside me, to understand the crisis our field is in, and the risk to communities like Oakland when these life-saving prevention and intervention programs are in jeopardy. We need to fully fund grant programs like CalVIP, which has helped create safer communities across California. From LA to Bakersfield, from Sacramento to Oakland, investing in community violence intervention has saved lives. And right now, those investments are important, more important than ever. To conclude, I do want to share a statement from our Congresswoman Latifah Simon in response to these cuts. She said, "I know personally that this work is not just about getting people back on their feet. It's about building new futures and a new, better world. Right now, the Trump administration is trying to tear apart this work, injecting more chaos into our society, and speaking in a reprehensible way about increasing incarceration rates and increasing deportation rates. In Congress, I'm committed to opposing these funding cuts and to restore funding for programs that decrease community violence and build safer communities in Oakland and across the country. We can't stop fighting now and leave people behind. This is about sustaining a promise that prisons do not create safer communities. We do. And I know with movements and people power like this, we will fight for the society and the democracy that we deserve. Thank you all, and let's keep fighting together." And I want to introduce Chet Hewitt.
Good afternoon. My name is Chet Hewitt. I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of the Sierra Health Foundation and the Center at Sierra Health. And we are the conveners for the Black Child Legacy Campaign here in Sacramento, of which program Healing the Hood is a part of that particular work. I'm also the National Board Chair for Advanced Peace, and led one of the initial efforts to replicate that work that took place in Richmond, California, and bring it to Sacramento, which is now known as Movement for Life. And I think that name speaks volumes when we talk about what's really at stake here. This betrayal at the federal level for the Community Safers Act and the proceeds that it brought to communities were not costs to be cut. They were investments that were long overdue. Long overdue for all the negligence that has been foisted on communities across this country. We know that community interventions work. As leader of a health foundation, we know those who are closer to the problem are most capable at resolving it. The voices, their intent, their commitment to this work, the walkabout they possess in communities, the ability to connect with young people who don't want to talk to folks who don't understand their experience. That is public health, both the art and science of making communities healthier and more vibrant. These resources were about gun violence and more. This is youth development and intervention. This is about cutting off the loss of possibility that comes when young people get off track. And that possibility, that potential, has both economic as well as social consequences associated with it. Saving our young men and our young women is good for our economy. That's right. That's right. Saving our young men and saving our young women is good for the health industry in this particular country. Saving our young women and saving our young men are good for families and communities in every state or city or region in California and nationally. This betrayal is not going to go without folks fighting back. There is no safe harbor in silence, none whatsoever. So we will raise our voices loud and vigorously to say what is wrong, even as we work to replace those funds to do what is right. Because we know what it looks like. We know what we actually need. And the sad part of this tale is that it seems as if the folks in Washington, the current administration, don't know, don't understand, and I think most challenging, don't seem to care. There is no form of government that one should be supportive of if it doesn't care about the lives and livelihoods of those it is supposed to serve. So I want to thank the Attorney General and our elected officials for stepping into the breach. Because sometimes you got to do things you didn't plan to do, or perhaps you didn't even want to do. But you're doing them for the right reasons, because our children are sacred to us. And our desire and commitment to serving them knows no bounds, right? No limits whatsoever. And so we will continue this particular fight until justice is in fact done, and hopefully resources are restored. You know, as I said in the opening part of my remarks, these are not costs, these are investments in the future of this country.
Wonderful. I just want to say couldn't be more proud to stand here with this incredible coalition of leaders, speaking up, speaking out, standing up, locked arms, no distance between us, speaking with one voice about the need and the critical and essential nature of this funding. And it's not too late for AG Bondi and President Trump to reverse course and invest in what works and promote more safety throughout our communities. I will say that when something works, when it makes our communities safe, as violence intervention and prevention programs so clearly do, and as the evidence and the data shows, it's important to scale that work, to spread that work, to grow it, to expand it, to have it touch more people, more communities who deserve the impacts of those safety programs. And divesting here is the opposite of that. One last point. We had an opportunity in my office to have community meetings and community circles throughout the state over the last year and a half, where we talked to those doing the work on the ground, those who are healing and who are helping keep communities safe. And the one thing they told us that they really wanted us to know was that ongoing stable funding is critical to their work, that the investments, not just this year, but not sure about what you're going to get next year, but year over year, are critical to be able to continue to do this important work. And what the Trump administration is doing here is the opposite of that, pulling money away at the drop of a hat, slashing budgets that are for organizations doing life-saving work. And so, again, we ask with one voice that the $811 million be restored. And while the federal administration ponders that question, we will continue to do the important work that we do here in California. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. If you want to pose a question to any specific speaker besides me, please let me know.